Well, now, it really is quite good. She feigns her death. He finds her, thinks her dead, takes his own life. She wakes, finds him dead, takes her life, both dead. Exeunt omnes, the end. Curtain! Standing ovation! Bravo! Bravo! Author! Author!
Is there a better-known tragic love story than Romeo and Juliet? It first premiered as a stage play in 1597 and was written by one of history's greatest playwriters, William Shakespeare. It's one of those few stories that has persisted throughout the centuries, every so often getting remade and adapted for a brand new generation to enjoy. Today I want to compare and contrast two of its most standout adaptations, that being the 1968 film version directed by Franco Zeffirelli and the 1996 film version directed by Baz Luhrmann. I wanted to compare and contrast these two to see why they stand out amongst so many other adaptations of this beloved story. The story is pretty much the same in both, with some slight alterations like whose servant started the fight at the start of the film, Romeo's crew tripping balls at the Capulets' party, and one of the most important fight scenes I'll have to break down piece by piece later. But just to recap the stories for whoever may not know, and I don't know who hasn't known this story, but just in case, this is your warning, there is going to be spoilers coming as I'm about to recap the whole thing. Romeo and Juliet centers around the characters of the same name that are the youngest members of feuding families called the Capulets and Montagues. They seem to fall in love at first sight, but tragedy and their families' hatred drive a wedge between them. It all starts after the most recent street fight that was started by their servants had to be stopped by the prince of the city. The prince who then warns them if they start a fight again, they will be executed on sight.
If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace.
After that, the son of the Montagues, Romeo, is depressed from having his unrequited love, Rosaline, who is a member of the Capulets, reject him. To get him out of his depression, his cousin Benvolio and best friend Mercutio talk him into sneaking into the Capulets' ball in hopes of him seeing Rosaline again. Meanwhile, Juliet's parents are intent on arranging her marriage to the Count Paris, who's about as interesting as watching a tree grow. The two, by coincidence, meet at the ball and fall in love at first sight. They then seek to elope with the help of Romeo's friend Friar Lawrence, who was at first not on board but believes their union could lead to long-lasting peace between their warring families. Unfortunately, Romeo didn't go unnoticed at the party as Juliet's cousin Tybalt, who hates Romeo's family with a passion, seeks retribution. When he does come face to face with Romeo, seeing him as family, now doesn't want to fight or start trouble despite his constant insults.
Romeo, the love I bear thee can afford no better term than this. Thou art a villain.
Romeo's friend Mercutio, though, decides to stand up for Romeo and challenges Tybalt himself. As the two have at it, Romeo is trying to keep them apart, leading to Mercutio being stabbed while Romeo was trying to keep him from attacking Tybalt, leading to Romeo killing Tybalt in a fit of rage over his friend's death. Later, when it's time to judge Romeo for killing Tybalt, the prince takes lenience on him since Tybalt was the one to kill Mercutio first. He exiles him instead of banishes him, but if Romeo should ever return to the city, he will be executed on sight.
Let Romeo hence in haste, else when he is found, that hour is his last. Romeo is banished!
This is a bad time for Juliet, though, as her father has sealed the deal on her marriage to Paris. Seeking to be with Romeo, she asks Friar Lawrence for help. He comes up with a plan to fake her death and grab Romeo while she lays in her family's crypt, in a temporarily induced coma, only to have Romeo's servant get to him first and tell him the news that Juliet is dead before the friar's letter can reach Romeo. Upon Romeo sneaking back in the city to see Juliet at her tomb, he takes a swig of poison so that he can be with Juliet in the afterlife. After Romeo dies, Juliet rises to see her beloved dead, and hearing people coming, she comes to the same conclusion Romeo did and takes her own life to be with him. The two lovers lie dead, with the families finally reconciling with the prince giving the eulogy at the ending.
A glooming peace this morning with it bring. The sun for sorrow will not show his head, for never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo.
The story really does have all the trademarks of a good Shakespeare play. You have premonitions, murder, a love story, and it always takes a sharp, drastic turn somewhere in the middle. Now to the biggest differences with the films, that being the setting and how they are presented. Right away you can see a glaring difference as both start out with the same opening narration. The 68 version does the normal open narration over an opening title, while the 96 version starts out as a TV broadcast, and even opens like that of an 80s action series like the A-Team, naming all the most important characters you are going to see. Both take place in the city called Verona, although they're set in two very different time periods. The 96 version looks like a typical modern city of the 90s, while the 68 version looks like a Renaissance city, dusty, ragged, and people dressed in tights and big feathery hats. However, the warring families can be distinguished by their contrasting colors, the Capulets wearing bright colors like red and yellow, and the Montagues wearing dark colors like blue and brown. In fact, most of the time Romeo and Juliet wear bright red and blue to really help them stand out from the crowd. In the 96 version, they wear either really odd, eye-catching clothing or very formal dress wear, such as dressing as Cleopatra or just look loose, casual summer wear clothing. The cinematography is also vastly different. The 68 version captures large portions of rooms, arenas, and characters, but often uses close-ups when the two characters are speaking to each other directly for prolonged periods. The camera also moves with characters a lot of the time and uses pretty sparse editing. The 96 version is a lot more fast-paced, using odd quirks like speeding up certain characters or shots for no real reason, along with really quick edits, and sometimes they'll even change locations in the middle of a sentence.
And too soon marred are those so early made. This night I hold an old accustomed feast. At my poor house look to behold this night.
There's a pretty good scene that shows this difference perfectly, and that's when Friar Lawrence was getting the idea of the young couple eloping, bringing peace to the city. In the 68 version, he simply looks at the statue of Jesus, and you can tell by the look on his face what he's thinking. In the 96 version, you're shown a montage of what he's thinking, set to a choir version of the Prince song When Doves Cry.
For this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household rancor to pure love.
The dialogue also follows a similar pattern. With the 68 version, the characters are shown to be speaking statically, standing towards each other.
Alas, poor Romeo, he is already dead. Stabbed with a white wench's black eye. Run through the ear with a love song. The very pin of his heart cleft with the blind bowboy's butt shaft.
While the 68 version has the characters constantly moving around with a hyper energy, save for a few slow and romantic scenes.
Well, alas, poor Romeo, he is already dead. Stabbed with the white wench's black eye. Run through the ear with a love song. The very pin of his heart cleft with a blind bowboy's butt shaft.
Frankly, both of their styles have strengths and weaknesses when it comes to their presentation. I personally like the quieter and longer cuts of the 68 film, but can't deny I was more focused on this 96 version, as it was constantly giving me imagery that caught my attention. On to the casting, both films had relatively new casting for most of the main characters, with the main characters Romeo and Juliet being played by Leonardo Whiting and Olivia Hussey in the 68 version, and along Leonardo DiCaprio and Clarice Danes in 96. Both give excellent performances as two wide-eyed romantics getting caught up in new love. However, the 96 Romeo comes off more as an actual teen that's caught up in the rush, where he's constantly fumbling and constantly being awkward when he tries to get to know her.
Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself.
I take thee at thy word.
Meanwhile, the 68 version I thought was better at delivering a more over-dramatized portrayal, particularly the scene where he thought they were going to be split and truly acts like the whole world is going to end.
A punishment! Be merciful, say death!
The Juliets I'm a little bit more split on, as their performances are a lot more even without much deviation. Aside from one scene with Danes, whereas when she goes to Friar Lawrence for help, things get really tense, and it does come off more serious when you're pointing a loaded gun at yourself and others. And definitely makes her my favorite of the two.
And with this, I'll help it presently.
Hold on.
Be not so long to speak, I long to die.
The two most important characters besides Romeo and Juliet would be Tybalt and Mercutio. Their counterparts have the most difference in terms of both acting and how the most crucial scene between them develops, this being the fight scene I wanted to break down earlier. In the 68 version, Tybalt was played by the then up-and-coming actor Michael York. He delivers a performance that is truly arrogant yet elegant in a way that can only really be described as British.
I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me.
What? Drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues, and thee.
Johnny Leguizamo plays him in the 96 version and has just a naturally annoying voice that he puts to work here, giving Tybalt a truly smug and volatile personality.
Peace? Peace? I hate the word. As I hate hell, all Montagues. and thee.
Mercutio is probably the hardest character to cast for since he has very contradicting personalities. On the outside he's quick-witted and easygoing, but we often catch glimpses of a more nihilistic persona. Harold Perrineau in the 96 version comes off more as a life of the party, a way more fun-loving personality of Mercutio. This guy is always stealing Cinder Sage whenever he appears with truly manic energy.
Her wagoner a small, gray, coated gnat, and in this state she gallops, night by night, through lovers' brains, and then they dream of love.
In the 68 films, John McInerney delivers a better performance in the more tortured and dramatic scenes that are really helped by the cinematography. When Romeo interrupts the Queen Mab speech, he says he's talking of nothing, where Mercutio calms down and agrees, saying,
I talk of dreams, which are the children of an idle brain, begot of nothing but vain fantasy, which is as thin of substance as the air.
Those are their strong suits, at least for me, as when the 68 version was ever trying to act funny, like screwing with Juliet's nursemaid, he just kinda came off more as an a-hole than funny. And the 96 version never really nailed the more dramatic moments for me. Onto the fight between them, they start out very differently. When Tybalt goes to challenge Romeo in the 96 version, it is done with a serious tone, with Tybalt making it clear he's coming here for blood. When Romeo approaches him to say he won't fight, and then turns his back to leave Tybalt, Tybalt starts to strike Romeo from behind. Still, Romeo refuses to fight back, saying in all seriousness that he meant him no offense and begging him to stop. This is when Mercutio jumps in to save Romeo, meaning to kill Tybalt before Romeo stops him, leaving Tybalt open to strike. After this, he makes light of his wound while asking for help, making everyone think he's joking again.
Courage, man. The hurt cannot be much.
'Twill serve. Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man.
Mercutio then wished a pox on both Romeo and Tybalt's houses before dying while Tybalt runs off.
I was hurt under your arm.
I thought all for the best.
Plague for both your houses.
No! No!
The scene cuts away to Juliet daydreaming of her love before cutting back to Romeo running Tybalt off the road. Tybalt crawls out of the car crash towards his gun before Romeo could get to it, and then Romeo does a pretty insane thing.
Mercutio's soul is but a little way above our heads, staying for thine to keep him company. And now, or I, or both must go with him.
This shocks Tybalt enough to let Romeo push him over and grabs his gun to shoot him, all leaving Romeo in a state of quiet shock, only saying once he is fortune's fool as he realized he just ruined his life and relationship with Juliet after killing her cousin. In the 68 version, Romeo isn't really distressed by Tybalt. When Romeo reaches out to Tybalt, shaking his hand with peace, which by the way his friends take as a joke and Tybalt an insult, Tybalt just insults Romeo one last time by washing the hand he shook and splashing his friends, before turning to leave. This is when Mercutio stands up to insult Tybalt, which triggers the fight. The fight itself isn't taken that seriously by either Mercutio or Tybalt, especially compared to the more all-out brawl between Romeo and Tybalt right after. They even both point their swords at Romeo at the same time when he tries to stop them. The rest of the fight is pretty much a stage play with everyone getting a laugh out of it. When Mercutio jumps on a ledge, Romeo again gets between them. Then when Romeo pulls Mercutio off the ledge, he falls on Tybalt's sword accidentally as Tybalt was rushing towards them. Even Tybalt is surprised and shocked to see blood on his sword before his entourage takes him away. Mercutio again makes light of the situation, making everyone think he's joking.
Courage, man. The hurt cannot be much.
No! 'Tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough. You ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man.
Again getting close up to Romeo, saying how he was hurt under his arm.
Why the devil came you between us? I was hurt under your arm. I thought all for the best.
After everyone realized Mercutio is actually dead, Romeo runs off to fight Tybalt in a vicious street fight, stabbing Tybalt as he was rushing towards to put the finishing blow on Romeo. When Romeo comes to his senses, he is overcome with emotion, screaming that he is Fortune's fool multiple times, even while being dragged off by his friends.
I'm Fortune's fool! Oh, Romeo!
Both these events have some strengths and weaknesses to them. In the 68 version, it does add some extra tragedy, as Mercutio's death comes off as more of an accident, and very avoidable, as well as making Tybalt's death a little more tragic, as it's pretty clear he didn't intend to kill Mercutio, and now he gets killed because of an accident in Romeo's rage. The 96 version, though, does make Romeo and Mercutio look a little better to me, as it shows just how committed Romeo was to preserving his relationship with Juliet by letting Tybalt take his anger out on him and saving him from Mercutio. Mercutio also definitely needed to intervene for Romeo here because Tybalt was going to kill him.
What would thou have with me?
Good king of cats, nothing but one of your 9 lives.
Well, I am for you!
For the rest of the cast, I do think the 68 cast do better in the more dramatic scenes, while the 96 seem to do better at more comedic and relatable scenes, with a couple of performances standing out from the others, like Tanasha Perry, who was playing Juliet's mother when she was passionately demanding the prince for Romeo's head for killing Tybalt.
I beg for justice which thou, prince, must give. Romeo slew Tybalt. Romeo must not live.
Then there's Pete Postlethwaite, a guy I've never seen turn in a bad performance as Friar Lawrence, coming off as a lot more genuine in his delivery.
That thou consent to marry us today.
Holy St. Francis. What a change is here.
Is Rosaline, that thou didst love so dear, so soon forsaken?
Young men's love, then, lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes.
All other cast members turn in great performances that only differ slightly. The only exception was the miscast of Paul Rudd as Paris in the 96 version, as even when he is trying to be boring, he is just, well, too charming. That's about it. My overall view on these are that both are fine adaptations. I kinda like the 68 version a little bit more as it feels the most like a Shakespeare play, and delivers some very nice drama along with some great sword and action scenes. The 96 version definitely knew how to entertain and how to leave an imprint though. If you have the time, I would suggest you check out both of them. And if you did see them, which did you like a little bit more, and what did you want me to talk about more? Now if you stuck around this long, thanks.
Hello again! You're okay! How are you even here? What do you mean? I mean, I watched you die. Nope! Never happened! But nope! Everything's fine. Nothing bad ever happened. Ever.
How does it feel to be the worst cop ever, huh? Shut up, your mother buys you Mega Bloks instead of Legos. You fucking take that, Becky.
A banishment! Be merciful, say death! Do not
Ugly
say
noise, son.
banishment.
Here, how about you cease this bitch crying?
Romeo, hide yourself.
That usually works.
You know when you and your friends take a picture, then you look at it and you're like, ugh, I don't look great in this. What's that like?
She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Younger than she. A happy mother's maid.
FBI, open up! You ready to fucking die?
No, yeah, I'm a bad bitch. You can't kill me.
So long story short, I went to a castle, met a princess, smashed the princess.
Nice.
Thanks. Then the king found out. He was pissed.
For God's sakes.
It's okay. Honestly, I knew this was gonna happen, so I've been practicing my swordsmanship, and What the fuck?
Art thou ready for thine punishment?
Why the hell aren't you using a sword?
Art thou retarded? Thou art living in the Middle Ages, friend. In modern days, we use the infamous Glock. Behold!
You know, the gun defeats the purpose of...